Hello everyone. So as some of you may have seen on my Instagram, this week I've been working on kind of an unofficial series on the color green, and all of the photos have a white border to kind of accentuate the green in them, and the primary focus has been plants. And I plan to continue that for the next few posts. I'm not really sure where I'm going with it, but I wanted to explore green as springtime finally arrives and as summertime inches closer towards us. And there's lots of green out already for me to photograph. So in today's video, I'll be going over a very simple lighting technique that you can use to enhance your photos. The technique is using tissue paper, which I have right here. And it affects the light in your image. So in this example, I've got the window right behind the camera. As I hold this tissue paper up, the light on my face should darken, and if I lower it, I should be brighter. So that's the exact method that I used in creating this photo. And I want to go over how you can manipulate lighting to enhance your photographs. So right here I have my camera set up with the macro lens, and I'm taking pictures of these lovely little plants here. And look at the live view. It's very, very bright, and my subject, which is this leaf right here, looks fine, but the background is way too overexposed. So what I can do is hold this tissue paper behind the background like this to soften the light that's hitting the subject from behind, and also decrease the stops of light hitting the subject. So then if we take the picture like this, we get an image like this. This was before, this was after. So the highlights are much more manageable now. And I expect in post-production, when I bring these highlights down right here, that the image will be very balanced. And I will crop it anyway, so that might not even be in the frame to begin with. I'll switch over to my desktop now. So I've imported the photos into Lightroom. This is the image without the tissue paper. So what I've done here is just set up my macro lens on a tripod to keep it very steady. I'm shooting at f/22 to give myself the largest depth of field as possible because I'm really up close to the subject. To compensate for the very small aperture, I use a relatively slow shutter speed of 1/3 of a second, which I couldn't do handheld. I needed a tripod to pull this image off. In Lightroom, I have the image pulled up, and to a certain extent, I could pull the highlights down and darken the image, but even with the highlights at -100, there's still a lot of overexposed regions in the photo, particularly right here and the tips of all the individual leaves, which is not ideal. I don't want to lose any of the data in the image just because it was too bright, when I could have done something to prevent that. The subject of the image is the center leaf, and I like the lighting on the center leaf. It looks great. So how can I decrease the exposure of the overexposed regions while maintaining good light on the main subject, which is the center leaf? The method that I use with the tissue paper achieves just that. If I go to the following image, I've put the tissue paper behind the leaves to help illuminate some of the extremely strong backlighting. Now, I did like how in the first image there was a nice backlighting glow. You could see light coming through the translucent leaf. And in the second image, because of the diminished backlighting, there's not nearly as much of that glow. I want to focus on the second image with the tissue paper for the highlighted regions of the first image. If I go into the second image and drop my highlights a bit, there's a lot more data to manipulate in the highlights region than in the first photo because the data isn't lost to the overexposure. So I'm going to drop those highlights to about -75. And I'm going to boost my shadows just a hair, just to 25 or so. And I'm going to bump up my vibrance in each photo just a hair. Let me try adding some saturation in. Then I will open each in Photoshop directly from Lightroom with the shortcut Command E. I apply that shortcut once to each photograph to open both in Photoshop. Once Photoshop has both opened, I will go ahead and copy one on top of the other. I want the lighter image, the first one, on top of the second. So I'll just click and drag over to the other tab and drop it. Once the two photos are aligned, you can simply create a layer mask over the top layer. And with your eraser tool, I will erase the highlighted portions, the portions that are overexposed. The foreground color is the active color and will determine whether you're erasing or replacing that mask. So I want to erase the entire background, and I'm going to erase the top edge of our subject. Now I want to make sure that I didn't mask out any of the wanted parts of I'm going to use the key X to switch the foreground and the background colors. And make sure that my entire leaf is just how I want it to be. Now I will soften my brush, dropping the hardness to 0 for the top portion where it merges, where the two layers kind of overlay a little bit, just to make as seamless of a transition as possible. And I'll zoom out, and it looks good. I don't like how much extra space I have in the background. It's really not used, it's mostly just bokeh blur. After clearing up some of these artifacts from the very small aperture that I was using, I will crop it. I want to crop it to an 8:10 aspect ratio. And I think I want all of the foreground. I think I just want the bottom portion of the image. Maybe I'll cut a little bit off of that to put our subject right on the third line. And I'm also going to center the subject a little more, like so. I press enter, and that looks good. So the next step is I'll grab the two layers and merge them, and then I'll create a background layer and quickly rename that background. And once I've done that, then I can add a second layer, set the aspect ratio of this new crop to square, and then if I hold Option as I'm dragging out, Photoshop will keep the image centered in the new crop. Let the crop happen, and then I'll simply use a white paintbrush to fill in the checkered transparency once I'm done. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. I know it was very quick, very simple, but we covered two techniques. One, layer masking, which is very, very useful, and two, how to use tissue paper to help alter your lighting when you're shooting outdoors. You can also use it in indoors like I demonstrated, holding it up at the beginning of the video. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. I really appreciate it. Make sure you follow my Instagram and my Twitter. I do post there regularly. And leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.